On your Friday episode of Locked On Raptors, we got a special guest in store for you. It's Jevohn Shepherd, the Raptors radio analyst starting this season. Of course, former Canadian national teamer and all-around good guy, former guest of the podcast. We're going to have him on, and we're going to talk about early season takeaways. And, of course, we got the Dude of the Week to hand out for the second week of the season. That's all coming up on today's episode of Locked On Raptors. Thanks so much for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to episode number 1270 of Locked On Raptors for Friday, October the 28th. I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Raptors for now 9 seasons. You can find my Substack newsletter, Post Touches, over at Substack. You want to subscribe there for free or for a small monthly or annual fee. You can also find me on Twitter at WoodleySean. You can subscribe, follow, rate, and review the podcast for free on your favorite podcast apps. And we are on YouTube, of course. You can go hit the big red subscribe button and support the show in video form each and every day as well. And I very much appreciate you for doing that. All right, on today's show, one of my favorite dudes covering the Raptors, in and around the Raptors, in and around Canada basketball. It is former Michigan Wolverine, former Canadian national teamer, former co-worker of mine calling CEBL games, who has moved on to work with far more talented people as the new Raptors radio analyst alongside Jonesy Paul Jones. It is Jevohn Shepherd. Jevohn, how are you, my friend?
Man, Sean, I appreciate that intro. Somebody might actually believe you, but no, you're my brother, man. You're my brother. We're locked in. We're locked on Raptors, but we're locked in family too.
We love it. We love it. Really happy to have you, man, and really, really glad to hear you're on the radio waves this season covering games for the Raptors. I have to ask you, you're working with Paul Jones now. Paul Jones is a legend of the game. Do you have any Paul Jones stories to tell from your first week or so calling games with him? Do you have anything that people should know about? And my sort of main question here is, do you have a favorite Paul Jones-ism? He's got lots of catchphrases, lots of things he'll lean on. What's your favorite of the bunch? Answer all of those questions in one shot. I just asked a terrible podcast host question, but I trust you to deal with it.
Jonesy, he's fun, man. He's a good time, and when he gets in and hits you with the from the bottom of the well.
Bottom of the well, yes.
But no, he has a lot of those one-liners, and half the time I'm trying to compose myself because I'm looking at him. I'm like, where are you pulling those from, Jonesy? But he cracks me up. And it's been, a blessing to work with him alongside him because, we don't go in there and it's not your typical broadcast. It's
sure.
Two guys chopping it up, and we're just having conversation, right? Yeah. He's a former player himself, so we just bounce ideas off each other. Sometimes we don't agree. A lot of times we do agree, and I think that's what makes it more fun, more enjoyable. Is that it doesn't feel like work at all. And there's sometimes one thing we always agree on is the minutes police, and how everybody as soon as this team takes a loss, 1 or 2 losses, everybody automatically points the fingers at the losses. And we're always looking at each other like, the purpose of this game is to win. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, if you don't win, ask Dwayne Casey what happens, right?
Yeah.
So, no, it's been great. It's been great. It's been awesome. I've been fortunate to work with some tremendous people. And obviously now with Jonesy on Raptors broadcast, Raptors radio.
Yeah, everyone, make sure you're checking out the radio broadcasts. They're always super fun. And, Jevohn, you're really, really good at what you do. I'm curious, we've called games that were broadcast on, CBC Gem, video broadcasts. We're in the building where we're calling games. You are calling games on the radio, remote from a studio, and it's on radio. It's way, way different. There's a way more descriptive element to it. You have to say the score a lot. That's the number one thing. I've called some games on radio as well. You have to say the score a lot, or people get very mad at you, because it's just, it's kind of always the question of, what's the score? So basically every bucket, you got to throw it out there. What have been, if any, adjustments for you to the cover job the radio broadcast? Obviously the play-by-play is a little bit more of the sort of script burden falls on Jonesy's shoulders in that situation, but for you, how does your analysis change? How does the way you approach calling a game change to do it on radio versus TV?
From radio to TV, I think the challenge there is with TV, you're obviously seeing, right? Your viewers are always obviously seeing, so you can be a bit more in depth, I would say, with TV in a sense, on, let's just say, the tactical aspects of the previous play or two, because your viewers can follow the play, right? And they're not missing any action. With radio, you have to be really clear, concise, but at the same time, describing the actual action that took place, right? As opposed to describing the tactics that you may see of TV, because again, now radio, nobody's seeing. So you have to be concise, you have to be tight, and then you have to give your play-by-play time to follow the play so that your listeners don't lose out on anything. But different feels, different flows. And I that was a lot for me to learn, but just bouncing back and forth between both. But I think the biggest challenge for me is obviously, doing home games in the arena and then doing road games in the studio, because for us, not only do you have to balance the game and the flow of the game, but you have to manufacture that energy and try and replicate it for the listeners, right? And while obviously when you're in the arena, that takes care of itself. When you're in studio, it's Jonesy and I looking at each other, and I mean, just trying to figure it out there.
Definitely. Obviously, this is coming from me alone. Put the Raptors radio broadcast team back on the road. Jevohn, you obviously, you don't need to weigh in on this one, but I said it. I said it. You heard it here first. I think you guys should be on the road. It would be really, really great if you could be on the road. Not to mention, I would imagine being on the road with Jonesy is a whole lot of fun. He seems like just a dude who knows everybody in every quarter of the league, and it'd be fun to kind of go around with him, I'm guessing. We're going to dive into some sort of bigger takeaways from the season, but you mentioned the minutes thing there, Jevohn, and I'm glad you brought that up, because minutes police, like, I get it, right? Have in Raptors recent history examples of, hey, you play a guy fewer minutes, he's probably going to be fresher come playoff time. We obviously saw it with Kawhi Leonard. We saw it with Kyle Lowry in, the seasons after he kind of burnt himself out being such a minutes horse for the team. And they, adjusted his regimen and brought him down to 33-something minutes in the last couple of years with the team. And that was great to see. Obviously, Pascal Siakam playing a ton of minutes. Fred VanVleet playing a ton of minutes. Scotty Barnes, when he's in there, playing a ton of minutes. It's a lot of minutes for these guys to absorb. My thing on it is, I think it's fine early in the season when you're going through this gauntlet of 7 very good teams to start the year. You want to win these games. These games are all going to matter come the end of the season. And it just feels like way too premature and early to be worrying about like pacing yourself for the playoffs. Where are you at on this? I know you kind of leaned into your sort of thoughts on it earlier on, but just too early to get angry about minutes, I think.
You can only preserve yourself for playoffs when you're in the playoffs. You've got to get there first, right? Yeah. Like you've got to get into that position. And I think sometimes there's some oversight in, let's worry about the back end of the season before we take care of the first. Well, guess what? If you look at the schedule, those are all teams that you're going to be competing with in the Eastern Conference. So those teams are actually very important, right? In terms of, seeding and so forth, come down the stretch. The reality is we haven't even played 5% of the season yet, right? So you want to get off to a good start. Now you get into the midpoint of your season, then you can plug and play a bit, right? And the reality is basketball isn't equal opportunity, right? So the guys that we're talking about that are, Coach Nurse should be dispersing some more minutes to, they've got to show and prove as well, right? And they've got to do it consistently, not in just spurts. Otherwise, you're limiting his tool. You can't. It's not just, hey, I'm going to hand you minutes, just play to play. It doesn't work like that, right? And I think that's where, I'm indifferent with that notion of, the minutes, please. And I find when we win, nobody talks about it. It's just it's those same minutes. When we lose, it's that's where we're pointing the finger to. If you're a coach and you look down at your bench, you're not going to not play a guy that's helping you win, right? Coaches are evaluated on wins and losses, right? So if you're helping that coach win, coaches don't have favorites. Guys that are producing, they'll find minutes for you and producing consistently. I'm speaking from a point of being a player that's been disgruntled before and being a player that's been playing the bulk of the minutes, and then also learning over the course of my career. Look, if you're producing, you're helping that coach. So these guys, we got to put a little more onus and a little more pressure on, guys not to just produce in spurts, but produce consistently, right? And now you arm your coaching staff with more.
Absolutely. And I guess like I'm also interested in the former player perspective on this, just as far as, you know, is there that tangible a difference as a player if you play 39 minutes in a game versus 34? To me, it feels like where the real rest comes in is like actual built-in, you're off today, you're not going to play this game, we're going to load manage you today. And like I can get on board with that idea. That's a very grueling schedule, lots of back-to-backs. Like you get deep into the season, it's clearly worked for them in the past to just give guys nights off, obviously Kawhi being the big example there. But for you, like, did you find that if you played in a game, like if you were playing 40 minutes as opposed to 35 or whatever, did that really all that much differently tangibly change the way you felt after a game? Like were you feeling those extra 5 minutes on your legs, or was it more of a okay, I'll just take tomorrow off and then I'll be fine?
The reality is you condition yourself to the amount of minutes you play. So if you're consistently playing 35, 38, 40, you then now are accustomed to that. Your body gets acclimated to that. It's the bigger it is for guys that are playing 10, 15 minutes to then play 30 one day. Sure. Their body actually feels it a lot more. Right now, over the course of a season, you want to start to tailor those minutes, especially when you are feeling fatigued. You are feeling like even mentally gassed, because that's what's essentially going to control the body. And players are aware of that when they need a day. And there's so much health science and where we are now that's improved and progressed so much to measure the fatigue of players and the risk of injury, that they're in a good position. But it's far more of a jolt on a body that's playing 10 minutes to play 30 one night than it is for a guy to go from 35 to 40. Now, that being said, yes, it is something you want to monitor, because I don't think the concern is more so the minutes played. It's the travel, right? It's the up and down there, the nutrition. And then these guys are young guys. They want to go out now and then have a good time. That's more of the concern than the actual on-court minutes.
Makes a lot of sense. Jevohn, we're going to come back on the other side. We're going to dig into some other big takeaways from the first stretch of the Raptors season. Plus, you have the honor later in the show of granting the Dude of the Week honors for this week 2 of the Raptors season. So we'll get to that later on. But first, got to tell our good friends out there about our good friends at Prize Picks, who are making daily fantasy sports easy, fun, simple, accessible. It's really, really awesome. I'm not much of a daily fantasy sports player, so Prize Picks just might get me in, as it's just very simple. You can enter 2 to 5 players in your entry, say whether you think they're going to score more or less than the points that are projected for them, and if you are correct, you can win up to 10 times on your entry. It's really that simple. Just imagine what a delight it would be to have some Canada basketball back in the Jevohn Shepherd days. You could say whether he was going to score more or less than the certain number of points he was projected for. What a beautiful world that would be. Pick made it possible. You can do that now with Canadian basketball players who are playing all over, either in the NBA or the international circuit when that comes up as well. They got all sorts of sports for you, so go and check them out. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON, meaning if you put in $100, they're going to match that with $100 just poof into your account. What a great deal that is. Don't forget the promo code LOCKEDON at prizepicks.com for that instant deposit match up to $100. All right, we continue on here with your first listen of the day. Jevohn Shepherd, former Canadian national teamer and Raptors radio analyst, hanging out here today, digging into some of our bigger takeaways from the first week plus of the Raptors season. They're 3-2. I think they've looked pretty good for the majority of the minutes they've played. The first half against the Heat, kind of the one real notwithstanding section of a game, I would say. Otherwise, it's been pretty good returns early on against some good competition. Jevohn, do you have sort of like a big overarching takeaway you have from the first 5 games that you're kind of thinking about, whether it's, something maybe changed from what you thought about the team before the year, something that's been even more cemented in your mind based on what we've seen?
Well, I think, and I tweeted it recently, the runs, Rico Hines runs, and the fact that those guys had spent so much time together playing in the offseason and just bonding together, right? I thought at this point in the season, we're seeing that togetherness, that chemistry. and they're able to get off to a quick start, right? And I think just the way that they play, you don't have a guy that's going to go out and give you 40 a night, right? But everybody's picked up and played well in their minutes, right? Like they've had a number of different guys lead them in scoring just in the first 5 games. And then obviously their defense, the interchangeability that we've spoke of time and time again, I actually see them adding, from a schematic standpoint, the way they're switching, the way they're, their zones, they're scrambling off the ball and the rotations rather a little different, right? But that's because you go into training camp, guys have been together. There's rollover from last season, 12 guys from last year's season on this roster. If you're the coaching staff, you get to expedite training camp and the learning, right? There's less of a learning curve and more of just picking up. And I thought, especially just watching Philly play and, how underwhelming they looked and, our games against Miami, we look a bit ahead right now. We look like we're off the races and got a little head start. And I think that's the biggest takeaway, right? And I don't think you're seeing any completely new nuances or offenses or, anybody has come back with a completely different package. There's a different level of confidence. There's a level of trust early on. And, guys that haven't played well in spurts have been able to pick it up. And I think that's been the biggest thing. And I think I attribute that to those guys spending a lot of time together and that continuity, that rollover.
And I think a part of that continuity, too, is it feels to me, Jevohn, like there's a little bit more role definition this year than there was last year. I don't know if you feel the same way, but like it seems like established. All right, Pascal, he's the dude. He's going to carry the usage. He's going to be the one from which a lot of the good stuff flows on offense. You've got Fred working with a little bit lower usage, working off ball. Obviously, the defense for him, he's the anchor of the defense. Like the way he's shouting stuff out, hanging out at the nail, just directing traffic. Like it's been really great to see him kind of just be his best self on that end. Too, you got Scotty just seemingly always in the right place to finish off a Pascal pass when attention goes his way. Trent seems to be embracing the, I'm just going to hit catch and shoots. And, there'll be some times where I have to bail us out late in the clock. And those will be my chances to kind of flourish and shine and try my gunner stuff. And then OG obviously is maybe the guy who's kind of in between the most right now. But even then it feels like it's established. Like he's not going to be the Pascal. He's probably not even going to be on the level of Scotty or Fred when it comes to the number of creation opportunities he gets. But when he gets them, he's going to get to the paint. He might fall down, but like there's good stuff happening there still on those drives. Like, what do you make of the role definition with the team this year? Obviously, the big thing coming in was there's lots of mouths to feed. There's 5 guys in the starting 5 who can all kind of hurt you and are going to want their looks. Do you think they've done a good job of kind of balancing that and then also just sort of establishing what everyone's job essentially is when they're on the floor together?
I think 2 things establish that. One, you look over in your locker room, and these are all guys that I know from last year. You know what everybody does. And secondly, I think this is the most important part, is Pascal's come out and he's established that he's the guy, right? There's a confidence that he's playing with. There's a confidence that permeates throughout the team. And everybody knows the ball goes in his hands. He's the lead. He's our primary guy, right? And the fact that he's come in, he had a healthy training camp, come into the beginning of the season healthy, and is playing at a high level. He's taken that baton, right? And taking that lead role, that charge. He's been vocal about it and he's shown it, right? So once that leader is, really turned that light on and they're in that focal point, they're saying it, they're proving it, they're doing it and showing it, then everybody falls into line. Now, if I'll say this, if Pascal had a slow start, it becomes a bit more turbulent, right? Because then guys want to show, okay, I can do a little more, or I should get this shot, or I should be a creator. But when you have your top 2 guys, your feature players come out and establish themselves early, then everybody understands, like, no, this is our guy. We can't do what Pascal does. We don't have the ability that Pascal has. So we have to be the best in our role. It also helps that Fred, he's done a great job of just coming out and distributing early, right? So Pascal's going to score. Fred's come out those first 2-3 quarters and said, I'm going to facilitate, I'm going to distribute and get guys involved. It's a perfect balance there, right? So I think, after that, and it's funny that you say that, after the Cleveland game, I went to dinner with one of the coaches, and he turned to me and he asked, how the hell does Coach Nurse get these guys to play so hard night in, night out, right? 82 games. And I looked at him, and then he said, like, this is the reputation that they have across the league, and even dirty, right? Even as dirty players. So the reality, and we all know all these guys are amazing guys and nice guys, but think about the reputation that they have playing hard, dirty, gritty, tough. And that comes from the defensive side. That takes care of so much. Then you have Pascal that's come out, been aggressive, said he wants to be a top 5 guy. He's playing like that. And then you have Fred that's coming out and distributing, right? So they have their roles have really, organically organized themselves.
For sure, yeah. It's been. I expected them to look good out of the gate just because of I didn't put a ton of stock into the Rico Hines run stuff until all they talked about on media day was, man, those Rico Hines runs really helped us. It was pretty awesome. Like that's got us ready to go. And it's like, all right, I guess it's real. I guess it matters. And it's certainly delivered on the promise. They have kind of become one with one another over the course of the offseason. And hopefully, as they get through this early gauntlet, and, I guess you could argue with whether the Sixers and Nets and Heat early on provide actually a gauntlet to go through, but, these are all teams that were figured to be quite good. Once they get through that, they got a spell of, pretty soft competition, and I could totally see this being just kind of the early stages of a big run, even early on. They just kind of feel like they're kind of hitting that groove, and haven't really looked bad for long stretches. They're stringing together more of the stretches where they look fantastic. And once you start doing that, maybe you just become fantastic. That's just kind of how it rolls. Jevohn, we're going to come back on the other side. We're going to dig into the Dude of the Week and give you the honors of naming the second Dude of the Week of the season. We'll get to that in just one second. A reminder, Locked On Leafs is available every single day in your favorite podcast apps and on YouTube. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morisuti breaking it down. They lost last night to a very, very bad Sharks team, which is upsetting and bad. And Dave and Mike will make sense of it all as the Leafs continue to be absolutely perplexing and frustrating, but that's okay because the Raptors are less so and a little bit more fun and engaging. All right, Jevohn, let's dive in now to the Dude of the Week. For those who are uninitiated, this was originally a very often occurring segment on the podcast last year, the Dude of the Game, as we'd hand out some flowers to someone who had a very doodly performance on a given night. It felt like it got overused in its role, and so now we've lowered the usage. It's just a Friday, last segment of the week, go off into the weekend, feeling good type of thing. Jevohn, who do you got as the Dude of the Week for the second week of the Toronto Raptors season?
It's got to be Spicy P, man. And
yeah, fair, yeah.
I'll go with Spicy P because, look, this is his fourth game with at least 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists, right?
Yep.
And numbers are great. Numbers are one thing, but he's gone out there, he's talked the talk, and he's walked the walk. And if you needed any image in your head or anything that exemplified that, you look at that last game against Philly, and he went out there, hit a couple shots, and started to talk crazy to PJ Tucker. And I just saw PJ start to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And
PJ
smaller.
knew.
and
you got me. Yep.
About him, he just was exuding so much confidence. He was that guy, right? So it goes to him, right? And I'm a big believer, if you're going to talk the talk, you walk the walk, and Spicy P's done that. So he's my guy.
Yeah, hard to argue. He's been just incredible, and just the confidence with which he's just kind of dictating things. I think the thing that's really stood out to me, I've talked about it on the show this week, but it bears repeating, is just he is so in tune with what everything that he does is going to do to the defense. It's what it's going to do in terms of where the guys on his team are going to move next. He just kind of has the whole floor mapped out and just knows exactly where each read is supposed to go and what read to make, what reads not to make, what passes not to make, what passes to make. He just feels so comfortable as the lead engine decision maker in the offense. It's really, really awesome to see. I want to ask you, Jevohn, so yesterday in the show, I was digging into some early numbers from this season. And one thing that did pop out as a minor red flag for the Raptors and Siakam is that they're not getting to the rim very much. They are 28th as of yesterday in rim pressure per cleaning the glass. And Pascal last season took 55% of his shots inside 10 feet. This year, just 41% of his shots coming inside 10 feet. Do you think that is a byproduct of just playing really good rim protectors to start the year? Allen Mobley, even Nick Claxton having that out-of-body experience on Friday. Bam, Joel Embiid, who, while not very effortful on a Wednesday, is still very large and in the way. Do you think it's more a byproduct of just the rim protectors they've faced and the deterrence that those guys are? Or is there something you're seeing in the way the Raptors offense is working that maybe is kind of skewing them away from the rim, which is troublesome considering at the start of the year, Nick Nurse said the thing they were going to focus on was free throws and rim pressure. Free throws, I think, have been pretty good. Rim pressure, maybe not so much. Is that something you think will clear up as they maybe face lesser competition and get out of this sort of early small sample thing? Or is there something you're seeing that maybe this is a thing to watch?
So I'll say this right now: they're just shooting the ball well, right? And if shooting is contagious, it's rhythm, and if you're shooting it well, you ride that wave,
Sure.
right? I think in years of the past, we questioned their ability to shoot the ball, and they were forcing things at the rim. Right now, there's a good balance. They're shooting the ball exceptionally well, so you're going to see less of that, and it's such a small sample size. But I think their default, like we know, is going to be getting to the rim. Like they have a number of guys that just slash to the basket. So I think law of averages, that's going to even out itself. But for right now, you ride that wave. And if you're knocking down shots, your offense is a bit more fluid because, like we know, a lot of these guys do naturally like to get to the basket. OG, Pascal, right? They do put rim pressure. So I don't think that's a question. I think it's just a matter of, hey, we're shooting the ball well, keep shooting it.
Right. Yeah, when like the Sixers are going to give you exclusively open threes for an entire night, I guess you just got to fire away. Why drive when we could get 3 points with this basically a layup because the Sixers don't care to guard us in transition or anything like that. Part of the dude of the week, Jevohn, is the Dudley play of the week. Lots of options, I think, from Pascal's week that was. You had, of course, the lefty dunk on Kevin Durant on Friday night. You had the pass I keep on thinking about where he kind of keeps his dribble alive while he's doing a bit of a post up against the Heat in the second game and then just fires it across court. I think it was to Gary Trent Jr. or it was OG, one of the two guys who shoots a lot of threes, but just like this gorgeous live dribble skip pass out of a post up. That was pretty awesome. I think my early contender or late contender, whatever you want to call it, is the final jump shot, the 2-pointer he got over PJ Tucker in that first quarter where he was on fire against the Sixers, where he talked the most after hitting the 4 threes. Which of those 3 stands out to you as the Dudley play of the week from Pascal Siakam?
That's why we're family. That's why we're brothers. We see eye to eye because that's the trot and then the trot back, just talking to PJ Tucker. And I'm telling you, I could see PJ just start to shrink and Pascal just became bigger. Like he was this giant in the room, right?
Yeah.
So that would be it for me because it's just the confidence there spoke volumes, and Pete just believes. You could just tell him like I'm him. I'm that dude. So that for me was probably the play. And like you mentioned, he's had a number of them, but it's not just the shot making, the creativity. And this stemmed even from media day. Him walking up on the podium and saying, "I want to be a top 5 player in this league," and him also saying now, like I've worked for this moment. Like I believe in myself. I trust myself. So you're seeing him go out and do it. So I like when he's out there and he's talking his talk, and getting after it.
Yeah, I almost want to go with the dunk over KD. For the symbolism of like the offseason. Are they going to trade Pascal for KD and all that was going on? And also my like one bugaboo with Pascal Siakam, and like full on Pascal Siakam is probably like my second favorite Raptor of all time at this point. I love Pascal Siakam. I've always been a believer. But my one thing has always been he doesn't dunk hard enough. He just does these like soft little dunks. So you have like OG just like yamming it whenever he goes up. And Pascal always just so delicate and graceful with his dunks. And that yam on Kevin Durant was forceful as hell. And I liked that. It was great to see a really hard, mean dunk from Pascal. Yeah, what you got?
And that's just Pascal being smart. He knows he's going to be logging a lot of minutes. I'm just going to get up light and flush it, finesse it, save myself, save the pounding on the knees, save the pounding on the hips. I'm going to get back on D, and I'm going to make this smooth and seamless.
Genius. Last one for you, Jevohn. I need you to tell me a time from your career where you were Pascal Siakam in the Pascal PJ back and forth, and a time where you were PJ Tucker in that back and forth.
See, I'm not gonna give you the Pete when I was PJ Tucker. I'm not gonna do that to me.
Yeah, that's gonna happen when we finally play 1-on-1. Of course.
Yeah. Obviously. Yeah.
Keep ducking me. It's fine. It's cool.
But you know what? I remember playing Spain and Rudy Fernandez. He made me feel like PJ a bit.
Yeah. That's a pull right there. That's great.
Talks crazy too. But no, I've had my fair share of Pascal moments.
Yeah. Who against who? Give me a name of someone who you just saw lined up across from you. It might be an obscure guy from Europe, but give me the name. It must be burned in your brain of like, that guy is guarding me tonight. I'm going to destroy him.
I'll give you this. In the Nike Hoop Summit, Monte Ellis and Lou Will. I got off to a great start in that game. And Monte Ellis was saying to Lou Will, hey, you got to guard him. And Lou Will's telling him, nah, he too big, he too strong. You got it. You good. But meanwhile, this is my first time going up against these two guys. I got off to a great start. I maybe had, 8 of our first 11 points in the opening 4 minutes. I thought I was going straight to the NBA after this game, but that was one of the moments where I just felt myself growing bigger. But no, it was some fun times, man.
It's good to know that Lou Williams and Monte Ellis learned their lesson and got good at playing defense after that. We'll round out the show there, Jevohn. Thank you so much, man. It's always great chatting with you. It's great to have you on the show. Great to hear you on the radio broadcast this year. Obviously, people know where to find you. Tune into the radio dial. But for, what dials should people be checking out, and where can people find you online and all that good stuff?
Well, just my name's Twitter handle, Jevohn Shepherd, Instagram, Jevohn Shepherd. And I'll be doing Raptors radio on TSN 1050. Should be fun. Should be a fun ride.
Hell yeah, it will be. Everyone, go check out the Raptors. When's your next game, Jevohn?
Tonight against Philly.
Hell yeah, tonight. Perfect. Raptors, Sixers. Listen on the radio, shall you? I will be, because I will be driving into Toronto and around that time. So I'll be listening on the radio. I can't wait to listen, and everyone should be jumping on that as well. That's going to round it out for this week. We'll be back again next week. Of course, Monday we'll break down the game against the Sixers with our pal Vivek Jacob for Big V Monday. And we got a good week lined up of games and reactions and all that good stuff. Thanks so much for tuning in as always. Go make your second listen of the day Locked On Sports Today. It's our 22-minute rip around the sports world. Everything you need to know from the night before, and it's great. It's fantastic. It gets you everything. It's a great little information download done in under half an hour, hosted by Pete Bukowski, available on YouTube and your favorite podcast apps. With that, we'll round it out. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the game against the Sixers. We'll talk to you. Bye-bye.